Welcome back inside the coach's room. I'm Steve Peters, but you can just call me Petey. Hey, today's a real special episode for me. Our guest today is a guy I got the opportunity to work with here in Arizona a very, very long time ago. And without further ado, let's get to one of my favorite people in the world of hockey, Rick Bowness. Well, welcome inside the coach's room. Today, a really special guest. This is the guy that has spent more time inside coach's room than literally any other human being on the planet. He has coached more games as an assistant coach or head coach than anybody in the history of the National Hockey League with 2,726 games. Today's guest, Rick Bowness.
And Petey, my best years were with you in Arizona. Now, come on, you can add that. You can add that.
It's true. It is true. And we're going to get to Arizona a little bit later because there were some pretty bleak times in Arizona. First, after 35 plus years coaching, what are you doing now?
Well, I got to tell you, this last weekend, I was in Orlando and I ran in a half marathon with my daughter, Kristen. Right?
Jesus
in the Disney World half marathon. Well, if you remember in 04-05 when we had that year lockout.
Yeah.
So I had to do something to motivate myself. So I trained all winter for that. And I ran in a half marathon when I went back to Nova Scotia. And last year, just talking out loud to myself, I said, when I turn 70, which was January, maybe I'll run in another half marathon. And I forgot all about it. Well, a couple of months ago, I got an invite in the mail from Kristen. You and I are going to run in another half marathon. So I did that last weekend, and I've been keeping busy here. We're in Boca Raton, Judy and I now, playing golf, going on the boat. So we've been keeping busy, watching hockey at night, just loving it.
And it's amazing. Like, you look fantastic. I don't know.
I'm 70 now.
But buddy, let's talk about this, Bones, because I have watched enough hockey. You've seen it, and every coach in the National Hockey League that's coached for any length of time looks tired. And you look better now than when you were behind the bench 12 months ago. You just do. Have you noticed that weight off your shoulders? Is it a different way of life that you get up and you're not on that hamster wheel anymore?
Yeah, it's different. Listen, I miss everything about the game.
Yeah.
I do. The thing I miss the most, honestly, is the interaction with the players and the people in the game. Like, I love the pressure of the coaching and all that. But I did feel at the end of last year, and that's when it first hit me that, wow, I am tired. And I wasn't myself, and I didn't have the energy that I thought that you and I both know I can bring to the rink every day. I just didn't feel that, and I didn't like how I felt at the end of the year. And as you know, Judy and I had some health problems last year that we had to deal with and how to get straightened out. So I felt, okay, that maybe it's time to take a little break here, get away from coaching for a little bit, get our health back under our feet, and we'll go from there. But I listen, you know how much I love the game. I do miss everything about it, but I do feel rested now.
But you're watching, and it's funny because I talked to Dave Tippett the other day, and you left the game under different circumstances than Dave Tippett. Dave got fired, and he said when he got on the plane, when he was on the plane from Edmonton back to Arizona, deleted all of his hockey apps, turned off the TV, and he got on his motorcycle and just rode and got away from it. Are you still able to watch those games? Is it hard? Is it too intense? Or do you have a different view of those games now that you're not involved in the winning and losing?
No, I watch hockey every night. Poor Judy, she thought she was going to get
Poor
a break
Judy.
from hockey. She said, "Who are we watching tonight?" Well, I find I don't watch the games as intently. I keep flipping channels looking for a good game, and so. But no, we're still watching hockey. Listen, it's our life, the only life we know. But no, I guess the thing you have to look at is I did leave on my terms. I wasn't shown the door, and I knew I was ready to leave. I knew at that point I needed a break, and we had a great year. As you know, we won the Jennings. We didn't do well in the playoffs, but we had a great year, and it was a lot of fun. I got to coach in the All-Star game. I became I became the oldest coach to coach in the All-Star game. I became the oldest coach to win a playoff game, and I kind of said, well, maybe it's time. So anyways,
you've done it all, Bone. And I will tell you this. I was disappointed because at the end of the 21-22 season, you were in Dallas. And at that point, you and I talked. And I was actually at a shopping mall with your son, Ryan, who was living in Arizona at the time. He was the director of pro scouting for Pittsburgh at that time, with your then grandson, who had been just born. And it was like, yeah, I'm retiring. I'm going to come to Arizona. I personally was getting excited, have a pop and go watch some hockey with you. And then things changed. The
Yeah.
Winnipeg Jets call. How do you go from I'm done. I'm gonna start golf and now I'm packing up and I'm moving to Winnipeg. What happened?
Right. It's a good question. So it's a Saturday night, and Judy and I are sitting back at the house in Nova Scotia, and we're looking at each other. You know, it is time. We've had a great career. It's gone on a lot longer than we ever could have imagined. And then the next day, the phone rang, and it was Winnipeg. And honestly, Petey, when they called, I didn't think it was an interview. I thought they were, because I know Chevy and I know
Sure.
Zinger and I know Chipper, the owner. I know all those guys. I thought I felt the call was okay, Bones. What are you hearing about our team? What do you think about our team? I thought it was just a generic question, a couple of questions like that about the team. And then all of a sudden the next day they called again and would you be interested in this? And because I know Chevy and Zinger and I
Hmm.
love Mark Chipman, the owner, and I looked at the team and they got a great goalie. They've
Yeah.
got a much better team than they had shown the year before. So I said, well, maybe we'll take another look at this. I started coaching with the Jets in the '80s. I played for the Jets, so there's a long history there with the Winnipeg Jets. And my daughter Kristen was born there when I was coaching there, so there was a long history with the Jets and the city. We loved our time. The 9 years I worked for the Jets in the '80s, we loved every day of it. We really did. And we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, let's take a look at this. And all of a sudden, I never expected to get the offer. I got to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
never did. When they offered me the job, I was kind of, wow, okay, that they're serious. So Judy and I talked and said, okay, let's go give it another kick.
Yeah, and it's funny because your career has gone, and we'll get more into your career ebbs and flows. Like you were a head coach on some really bad hockey teams. We're going to talk about that later. Not your fault. You didn't build the damn teams, but they were
I was
bad.
the coach. If they're bad teams, it's the coach.
Yeah, I was a part of one of those really bad teams. But then you were an assistant coach for a long time, and you're a mentor. You're mentoring some of these young guys, finding their way as head coaches in the NHL. And then as your career continues, you get to your Dallas, and now you've established yourself as a head coach again, and then Winnipeg. So Winnipeg brings you in, and hey, let's call it the way it is. There were considered from the outside looking in, there were some culture issues, locker room issues. We're seeing it with Rick Tocchet in Vancouver now. We're seeing it in New York, clearly. How important was it for you to try to set the culture and do things the Rick Bowness way when you got to Winnipeg?
Very important because when you're not there, it's not like I was promoted from within the organization. I
Right.
knew everything that was going on. I didn't. All I can tell you is, first of all, 2 years before that I went in there, we went into Winnipeg and we said, "Wow, this is a good hockey club.
Yeah.
They're big, they're fast, they're aggressive. They've got a really good team." The next year we went in there and I'm looking at the other coaches saying, "Wow, what happened? What happened to this team?
Hmm.
They weren't competitive. They didn't work. They were just out of sorts." Paul had stepped down in December, and it wasn't the same hockey club. And so then so when they offered me the job, okay, what happened? So I get on the phone. You start talking to people, and so much was the culture, the culture, the culture. Okay, then we've got to change the culture.
Hmm.
And so we can't keep doing things the same way, and that's the explanation of insanity. So I knew I had to do something drastic. We went in there, and again, after talking to everybody, we decided, okay, listen, we're gonna change the captaincy. We're gonna change the leadership group here. We have to try something
Right.
different. And what I did make it very clear to the players, I brought them all in before camp, all the guys that had been there, and I said, look, I know I'm new here. I haven't seen what's gone on. All I know is I've talked to everyone in this organization, and I keep hearing the same thing. But somebody has to make that decision to make that change. And I said, that's me. I made that decision. That's on me. So I wanted them to know that it wasn't from somebody else in the organization, that I had made that call. So we did that. Then we did name a captain, and we encouraged the room to take over. That's all I heard again was, we all want a voice. We all want a voice. And that's when I said to them, okay, there's no captain. We have new leadership group here. Everyone has a voice. You got something to say it. And like I always tell players, I can't fix a problem if I don't know what it is. If you got a problem, you got to come see me. You know me, I talk to everybody. So I opened that line of communication right away. And the players were really good. And we did start to hear more voices in the room. And we did you could start to see that the players take a little bit more ownership of the team. Ultimately, any winning team, the players take ownership of the
Yeah.
room. They're the ones going on the ice. And it did take a couple of years. But if, that group in there, that's a great culture they have right now. The players are taking ownership of that team. It took a couple of years, there's no question. But on the ice, we became a much more competitive team. We became a much harder team to play against. We won the Jennings last year, giving up the fewest amount of goals. So they learned how to play the right way. And you can see an extension of it this year. They picked up right where they left off. But we had to make some changes. We had to get rid of that stigma that no one wants to play in Winnipeg. We
Right.
had to get rid of that. And the way you do that is you change the culture. You make it a much better environment in the room so that everyone enjoys coming to the rink. As you and I know, that's
Yep.
important. So we created that atmosphere in there, and I'm very proud of what we did there in the short time. But it had to be done. Are you ruffling some feathers? Are you hurting some feelings? Absolutely. But you have to do it, and
Was that
someone
hard?
has to take the responsibility for it, and that was on me.
But you look at your career, is that harder at your point in your career? And honestly, I don't want this to sound glib, but at that point, it's like, who cares? Like, this is the way we're going to do it because I know how it works. But if
Yeah.
you were, let's say, 20, 25 years ago, would that have been much harder for you to do to ruffle those feathers?
Absolutely. And as I told the players, hey guys, I'm not here looking for another job. Right? I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about getting a job in a couple of years. I'm done. This will be my last job.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to do whatever I have to, whatever I think is necessary, I'm going to do it. If I think it's going to help the team and it pisses some people off and ruffles some feathers, well, that's the way it's going to be because I'm not worried about working again. And I was happily retired for about 2 days. Anyways, so the players knew that's where I was coming from. That I'll do whatever I think had to be done, and with my experience, they had to respect that a little bit.
And I think that's hard. And one of the things I like to do on the show is take people inside the room and get inside coaches' heads. And everybody thinks, oh, they're this big tough bully. They're the head coach, and these decisions are easy. They just stamp their hand down and they're done. It's not like that. Like there are young coaches in this league that are still finding their way. They don't want to upset the apple cart inside the room. They don't want to upset the general manager. And all of these outside influences come into these decisions, and it makes them much harder. To your point, and I don't want to say you don't care because you completely care, but
Yeah.
it's not that okay. I'm not if I piss off the general manager, okay, but I'm going to do it the right way. If I upset the locker room, that's okay because I know it's right. When you can come to that realization, God, that's got to be just almost liberating and freeing.
Well, it is. As you know, we're living in a very sensitive society, right?
Yeah.
We are. And the players today are very sensitive. So I found myself over the last 10 years. I mean, I've always talked to players, but I talk to them a lot more now. I got to understand their background, understand how they're raised, got to get to know them really well, who can handle me coming down
Yeah.
hard on them and who can't, and how to do it the right way. Who can come down in those team meetings that we have? Who can you single out and okay, that's good, and who can't you because it's going to affect them, and that's important that a coach today opens up those lines of communication so you know that going
Mhm.
into things and who you can and can't come down hard on, and then you have your leadership group is absolutely huge to these days. You have to have that leadership group because they have to be your voice as a coach. You always worry about the meeting after a meeting. So
Mhm.
we have a meeting, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of players get together and they have their own meeting. That's a killer in any locker room. It is, and we had to make sure that didn't happen, and it didn't happen in Winnipeg because everyone bought in, and it's a great group there now, and I'm glad they're having the success. But you have to take those steps, and they have to know where you're coming from. So when I told them, "Listen, I'm not here worried about working again or another job," okay, all right. So this is as honest as it can be. I'm not worried about getting another job in 5 years or pissing people off and not getting work again. That's not even a factor. So I'm going to do and say whatever I think is necessary to help this team
Mhm.
take the next step, change the culture, and become a winning organization and an organization that the players and everyone can take pride in.
Yeah, and it brings up my next point. And you've read it. You saw the recent athletic player poll that said if you had a no trade list, what is the first team that you have on it? And overwhelmingly, nearly 50%, it's the Winnipeg Jets. And before you answer this, I look back at one of the teams that used to be high on that list was Edmonton as well until they get Connor McDavid and they start winning. And now
Yeah.
you're saying, yeah, I want to go there. I'm going to win. I don't. It's cold. Okay, it's cold, but but I want to go win. And in Winnipeg, I think one of the knocks, and I'm part of that culture, is I traveled to Winnipeg for 20 years on a plane, and all I knew of Winnipeg is the 2 blocks between Portage and Main and the rink. That's it. I didn't see anything else in that city, and I think it's unfortunate because I think there's so much more to that city. So when you hear that, what does that make you say about Winnipeg, and what do you have to say is why Winnipeg?
Listen, Winnipeg's they've got great ownership there. Mark
Hmm.
Chipman, Dave Thompson. It starts there. They've
It
got
does.
great ownership. They've got good management, and now they've got a good team. But your point on Edmonton, take McDavid and Draisaitl out of there,
Yep.
all right? And they're an average team. Are they going to be lining up to go to Edmonton? No, they're not. And now Winnipeg is up there at the top of the league where they should be. Now you're not going to have that so much. Yeah, downtown Winnipeg, no, it's not great. But the license plates there, what do they say? Friendly Manitoba.
Yep.
There's great people there. They're really, really good people. And you're right. So the visiting teams come in, and all they're seeing is the old hotel. So it's an old hotel
Yep.
and the rink. And there's a great atmosphere in the rink. But that's all they're seeing. And downtown Winnipeg is not great. And I give the people there a lot of credit because they're trying to clean it up. It's going to take time. But when you have a winning team and your players are treated as well as they are in Winnipeg, they're treated better than anywhere I've ever been. They like, how when the players come in August and start training and
Yep.
everything together, they're given meals. They're given meals then. Usually the meals
Yeah.
start at training camp. They come to the rink ready to work out. Breakfast is there, lunch is there. So those little details mean an awful lot to teams. So I'm hoping the stigma of Winnipeg, now that they're such a great hockey team, and it's a good group of guys.
Mhm.
So that spreads around as well. Right? That stuff gets around. So I'm hoping that stigma on Winnipeg will go away. They're a good hockey club. They got a great shot at the Stanley Cup this year, and I hope they pull it off. But again, if you go to Edmonton, you take McDavid and Draisaitl out of there, it's going to be at the same level as Winnipeg. And I'm hoping that the success the team is having, and again, how well they're treated and the great ownership they have there and management, that stigma goes away.
And I've always said about great coaches, you show me a great coach, I'll show you a team with a really good goalie. And
Yeah.
no offense, Bones, kind of
Yeah.
followed you around a little bit at the end. And Connor Hellebuyck. Connor
Yeah.
Hellebuyck, who I think right now is the best goalie in the world. I really do. There is a knock on him right now, though. Can he win in the playoffs? You look at the numbers last year, and it's 6 goals, 5 goals, 6 goals, 5 goals against a really good Colorado Avalanche team that found their stride at the incredibly right time for them.
Yeah.
You have to win one game tomorrow. Is Connor Hellebuyck your goalie?
Yes. Yeah. I think go back to Tampa. Remember that great year they had?
Yeah.
And then they got swept in the playoffs by Columbus. No one saw that coming,
Right.
right? They all grew from that. Vasi, the goalie, grew from
Hmm.
that. So yeah, we did. We've improved the team play there. Huge progress. Yeah, we had a tough playoff. They will grow from that. Bucky will grow from that. I was watching him in the Four Nations,
Hmm.
and he was solid. Like those goals that went in the winning game, the gold medal game, the final game. You can't stop that. But no coach in this league will go anywhere without elite
Yeah.
goaltending. It is by far. No matter what we do, if the goalie doesn't stop the puck, it's out the window. You have to have the goalie. They've got the goalie. Tampa had the goalie. And you're right. Right now, Hellebuyck is the best goalie in the world. I think he's grown from the last two playoffs where he wasn't very good. He knows it, and he's a tremendous competitor, and he challenges himself. He's big, he's athletic, he's competitive, works his butt off in practice. Think good things are going to happen for them, but I think he's learned a lot from those last couple of playoffs. It's been 4 years, I think, since he's won a playoff series. That will wear him down a little bit, but he's gonna overcome it because he's a competitive guy, and I would take Bucky right now over anybody. And I
And
love Vasilevsky. And I'll
yeah.
tell you the goaltending thing. Remember, we went to the bubble, the
Yeah.
finals in in
Yep.
in, in Edmonton in the bubble. We did that with a backup goalie.
Yeah.
If we had Ben Bishop in the net that
Yeah.
year, we would have won. Our team game was better,
Yeah.
but and give Hudobin credit, he played really, really well, but he was up against Vasilevsky. If we had Ben Bishop in the net, we would have won the Stanley Cup that year. But that's
That's the way it
easy to
goes.
say
You're
right
right. You're
now.
right. And
But
we are.
that's where it goes. You need
Yeah.
to have that big
Yes.
goalie in the net.
And we're definitely going to get more to the bubble, but I want to talk about one more player in Winnipeg, and then we'll move on from the Winnipeg Jets. It's a player that just set the record last night for the most goals in franchise history, and that's Mark Scheifele. And I always look at a player that I want to go to war with. And I want a guy that scores goals. I mean, of course you do. You need the offense. But I want a guy that's going to play both ends of the ice. I want a guy that's going to get a little chip on his shoulder, play with a little bit of grit. What does Mark Scheifele bring to that locker room?
Oh, he's been outstanding. And I'll tell you the things you don't see. All right, you're talking about the things you see. Here's the things you don't see. He's the first guy at the rink in the morning. He's the first guy on the ice in the morning working on the skills. He drags players out on the ice early to work on their skills. He stays after practice. You see him talking to the players. You see him, you hear what he's saying in between periods. You hear what he's saying on the bench. Or all the things you mentioned are wonderful, but those are the things that make him a very special player. He works his butt off and he takes great pride in his skills. He's much better two-way player now than he was for a few years ago. You look at his plus minus last year, he was up in the 20s. And the year before, he was a minus 18 or something. So he's figured it out. You got to play a 200-foot game, and he plays a 200-foot game now. But again, it's his influence on the players, off the ice, on the ice, in practice. He works hard every day. Like, he never takes a day off. You love it being around the guy, and it's infectious, and it does rub off on the other players. So he's an A. So when we named Adam Lowry captain last year, it could have been Josh Morrissey, could have been Mark
Yep.
Scheifele. We went with Adam, but those three guys run that hockey club. Kyle Connor's a quiet leader in that room. DeMello's a quiet leader. Pionk, like, there's great culture in that room. But Mark Scheifele is certainly one of the guys that leads that team, both on
Uh,
and off the ice.
That's an outstanding hockey team, Bones. I haven't, and unfortunately, most of the league doesn't get to see them on a day in day out basis because they're not playing in the East Coast like Pittsburgh and Washington. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But you started coaching your first time behind a NHL bench is 84-85 with the Winnipeg Jets, and you
No,
coach.
it's
I
not.
was wrong.
You're wrong, because and that's not your fault. It's the league. I started coaching in Winnipeg in November of '83. If you go
Oh,
back, they fired Tommy Watt,
yep.
and I was player coach in the
Player
minors.
coach, yeah, Reg Dunlap.
Yeah, as you done enough, and they fired Tommy, and they brought in Barry Long like November 22nd or
Yeah.
something like that in '83. And I retired as a player and came up to help. But that's not your fault. I've been
No, it's
after
that's I
the
just do my
league
research,
has
buddy.
to change that, and they've never changed it. But it was November '83. But go ahead.
So it's November 83. But the point back then, that's old time hockey. I mean 1983, 84 Jets, that's old time hockey. I mean that's where the coach can have a hammer. That's where the coach can be an ass and he can be tough and the players just do what you're told. You do two-a-days in training camp. You're there all day. But you go to 20, 23, 24, your last year coaching, and you go, okay, players are softer. Sorry, players. It's just the way it is. You're having protein shakes and video games, not beers and burgers. And it's just a different game. And these players, their agents are involved, money's involved. I've even seen a mother involved at the medical room during a game. I saw mom down in the locker room,
Wow.
and that's true. So
Wow.
the evolution of the game from 1983 to 2024, one, why? And two, how do you, as a coach, adjust? Because if you don't adjust, you're just, oh, he's an old school coach. He can't play this game anymore. How do you do that?
Adapt, adapt or die. That's what it is. Adapt or die. And I have always hated and fought that old school. I've never ever wanted that associated with my name. I think again, as the different generations come into our league, you realize they are a little different and they've been raised different, and there are a lot of them are coming from financially sound backgrounds because hockey's so expensive to play, and you have to treat them differently. But it goes back to what I mentioned to you earlier. You have to talk to these guys a lot more today. Like, they're not spending time in the minors to learn how
Hmm.
to play the game the right way. They're being force fed into our league. And when they're force fed in the league, they need a lot of coaching. And the only way to do that to get them now is open that communication
Yeah.
right away. I'll go back to Victor Hedman. When I went to Tampa, like, Victor had three or four coaches, and Matthias Olin, who was I had in Vancouver, was there, and he gave me a best tip. He said Victor doesn't trust coaches right now because he's heard so many voices. So the first couple of weeks I was in Tampa, and I was coaching the defense end, which I absolutely loved doing that. Victor and I didn't talk about hockey. We talked
Hmm.
about him. We talked about his background. And then after we built the relationship, then we started to dabble into the hockey and things like that. But I had to build a trusting relationship with him before we could even dwell into the hockey and the things that I know I can make him a better player, help him to become a better player. But that's what it is today. It's communication and adapting with these kids. Every generation that's come into our league, it's different. And you have to, as a coach, you have to adapt or die. Remember that scene in Moneyball when Brad Pitt is firing the coach? That's what he says. Adapt or die. So you take that, and I said, well, that's what I've been doing. That's how I've survived all these years. But you know me better than anyone. I always talk to the players. I'm always open to communication. So I really didn't have to change that much. I didn't, because that was just me from day one. And it probably back in 91, 92, when I got fired in Boston, we went to the conference finals. They hated the fact that I talked to the players so much. They did. It bothered them because that's old school. That was the old time. That's how we dealt. Don't talk to the players. Tell them what to do, and that's the end of it. And it bothered the management so much that I would talk to the players so much that probably cost me my job. But that's okay. I did it my way.
Hey,
But the
hey,
big thing, Petey, you change. You adapt or die. You go with the generations coming in.
and I believe this too because I've seen it when my first year in the National Hockey League was 1997. But it was the coach was just you just said it and the players did it. And
Yeah.
I'm talking like Keith Kachuk, Jeremy Roenick, Rick Tocchet. You just said yes sir, yes sir. That's just the way it was. And
Yeah.
now unless you pat a guy on the back and everything's going to be okay, it's just a different world. And that brings me to you as a person. And you were one of the first assistant coaches that I had worked with the National Hockey League. And I will say this about Rick Bowness is you make it that long and you survive that long adapting, but you also stepped away from the game when practice was over, when the game was over. You didn't. I've worked with coaches that the wheels never stopped, and at some point that you couldn't be around them. When the practice was over, the game was over. You were one of those guys that said, "Okay, let's get away from the game. Let's go have a beer and let's go watch. Let's go watch a baseball game, or let's do something different." Um, did you have a hard time turning that off when you left the rink, or was that part of who you are to make sure you were able to keep the energy when you were there?
A little bit of both. I think I knew when to turn it off. Okay, I need a break here. I mentally
Hmm.
break because I'm not. Sometimes you get so wound up and you get so invested in it, you can't see the forest for the trees. And when you hit that point, that's when you know you've got to take a step back. Go home, take your wife out for dinner, talk about anything but hockey. Go spend more time with the kids, or just get away from it. Go to the driving range, hit some balls we could do in Arizona. But you have to know. Okay, you know what? And I felt this last year at the end of the year. I'm not seeing the forest for the trees. It's just, okay, I need a break here.
Yeah.
But I think that's how I've coached. And I just had an instinct, okay, it's too much right now. Get away and think clearer. Just so get your mind off the game for a little bit. Because if you get so wound up, the players feel it too.
Hmm.
They oh God, he's so wound up every day. The players feel that, and that wears on the players, right? Because now they're afraid to come around you. And like we said, you got to enjoy coming to the rink. I don't care. It's a game. It's a
Hmm.
business. It's more and more a big business, but man, it's still a game, and you got to enjoy going to the rink. And I've always had that attitude that as a player, I loved going to the rink, and as a coach, I did. As you know, I love going to the rink.
Hmm.
But when you start to feel it, okay, it's getting too much. That's when you know you have to take a couple hours and go do something else, and then come back to it. So if we left the rink, we went out of beer, whatever, I'd go home. But later in the night, you start thinking, okay, now I got to get ready for tomorrow. So now you get thinking about it again. But you need that little break every now and then just to clear your own head.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that you saw in Boston this year, you saw Jim Montgomery lose his job to Joe Sacco, a guy that was on the bench, and you've been a replacement coach four times in your career. Dan Maloney, Mike Milbury, Bobby Francis, Jim Montgomery, all different circumstances, all different situations. What is that like coming in mid-season? And we talked about Joe Sacco and getting the coach's bump. Some situations you were right there as an assistant coach. And I know in Arizona, you were the assistant coach right behind Bob Francis, and you had to go in the locker room the next day and go, okay, things are changing. Like, what's that experience like as you come in and in relief halfway through a season?
So if you look at those two scenarios, so the one with Bobby, like that was tough. But again, I knew I had a good rapport with the players. But then all of a sudden we started to sell all the players.
Yeah. Oh, it was a
Remember that?
miserable year.
Right? All of a sudden, so now we're just selling guys, and the
Yeah.
team knows, okay, we're selling. We're looking forward to the future. That was a tough scenario. That was tough to deal with because the players are looking at you, and you're saying, "We got to win. We got to do this. We got to do that to win." And they're looking around the room saying, "Okay, who's leaving next? And who are these guys coming in? They're not very good." But that's part of selling, and what happens when you start to sell. The difference in Dallas. was we were a good team and we
Good.
were really playing
Yeah.
well. And so Jimmy wasn't fired because of the team playing poorly. So when I took over that situation, I didn't change anything. I didn't have to, and the
Yeah.
players knew we had a good team, and we just kept rolling. Now, did we have to make some adjustments as we went along? Yeah, we did, and we were able to do that. But the team and we took over in Phoenix, man, that just got hard because you start giving away your best players and
Yeah.
everything, and you're bringing in guys for the future. There's no way you can compete, especially at that time of year. Situation in Dallas was December or whatever the heck it was, and we were playing well. And I told the players that we're playing well. We really
Yeah.
like
Just
the
play.
player well. Don't think I'm coming in here making a lot of changes. I'm not. But even at that point, I had a good rapport with Sagi and Jamie Benn and all the key guys,
Yeah.
and I knew I was going to get Pavelski, and I knew I was going to get their help as well.
It's funny because you talk about the Arizona Coyotes back then. It was Phoenix Coyotes then. And I want people to go to HockeyDB and look up the 2003-4 Arizona slash Phoenix Coyotes. There were some guys, we'd be at team meals going, what is this guy? No offense to anybody that was there. They played more National League games than I did, but you're like, oh boy, we're in one. And that's where you talk about your emotion behind the bench. And I remember early, like, whoa, like when you were on the bench, you were fire, man. You had that energy, that passion, and it was sometimes scary. And I saw you, like you talked about evolution. You saw you in Dallas and Winnipeg. Yes, if the situation arose that you needed to be upset, you were, but I didn't see that the constant, you were on edge. You screamer yeller. Like, when did that part of your game kind of calm? Before, geez, we were worried you're going to pass out back there, Bones.
Well,
When did that calm down?
when you look at your roster on the board and then you look at the other team's
Yeah,
roster and
fair.
say, "My God, I hope
Yeah,
they
that's
don't
fair.
show up tonight." So,
That's
and
fair.
that's when you try to get the fire up, try to keep the energy up, try to
Yeah.
keep the passion up. Then when you take over a veteran team, they know and they figured it out. Then you can calm down and figure out when to have your little outburst and everything. But you try to bring passion to the rink every day. And sometimes, yeah, I went overboard. There's no question about it. But then as you get better teams and you get a little more experience on players in front of you that they can handle the situation, then it does help you calm down a
Yeah.
little bit. But the fire still burns. You're just holding it in a little bit longer until there's an outburst.
I want to ask you one more question. I wasn't planning on going down this road, but
Oh, here we go.
no, this isn't bad. It was Christmas time in Arizona, and Wayne Gretzky's the head coach. Barry Smith, longtime assistant coach in the National Hockey League. Rick Tocchet, Rick Bowness, and myself are called into a meeting on a day off, and we're like, "Are you serious? We got to go in on a day off?" Like, and trust me, Wayne was a guy that Thursday day off, dude was golfing. He wasn't there. Hey, let's have more board meetings. Like, that wasn't Wayne's style. So we're like, "What's going on?" And we get to the Gila River Arena at jobbing.com at the time. And Wayne goes, let's go to the parking lot. Let's go to the parking lot. We're like, what is going on? We get to the parking lot, and there are these five brand new cars lined up in the parking lot. It was like Oprah. You get a car. You get a car. And with Christmas, we got cars. By
Yeah.
the way, Dave Tippett, give me a $50 Best Buy gift card. Didn't work the next year. Just letting you know, Tip. So Gretzky gave us all cars. And I changed my life, by the way. And you guys in a different financial situation. I was still a little younger. Changed my life. I know my car eventually went to my son. What happened to your Wayne Gretzky Ford car?
That was an amazing day, right?
Very
It
good
really
day.
was. And the one thing I'll always say about this, about Gretz, like I always felt bad. You talk about bad. We didn't have the money to give him a better
Yeah,
team,
that's
right? There
true.
was no money there.
Yep.
So I always feel bad when he wants to dabble in coaching, and we get this team, and there's no money to make the
Yeah.
team better. That still bothers me to this day that the greatest player that ever played, and we couldn't give him a better team. But anyways, those that we had loved that car, but eventually, so I ended up going to Vancouver.
Yep.
And Kristen, my daughter, she graduated from Desert Mountain High School and she was going to the University of Arizona. So we gave the car to her
Yep.
so she would have a car. And now she's at university with a Ford 500, which is a great car
For
for
a
an
great
old man
car.
like great for an old man like me. She's in
Yeah.
college, but it was a safe car, and I never had to worry about her calling me, Dad, the car broke down, or I need
Yeah.
this or that. So
She looked like a limo
uh,
driver on campus, I'm sure. The
that's
big black
I love that
four-door
car. She
sedan.
loved that car, and listen, it worked out great. And well, Tip gave you $50. It's more than I ever gave you.
That's true. Although you bought my beers and burgers.
I look after you.
I don't think I ever paid for a dinner on the road for the years you were
No.
there, Bones. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up, Bones. I got a couple other things I want to talk about. First, we were just talking about the Gretzky and the car. Does hockey belong in Arizona?
You would hope so. Listen, we spent 7 years there. And again, everybody, remember when we went to Glendale? Is why you're going to Glendale? Well, Glendale was the only place that wanted the team. They were
Yeah.
the only team that gave us the land, gave us the money to build a rink. You would hope it would. You hope it would grow there, but it's a long shot. It really is. When you see the other cities that are being mentioned in
Yeah.
terms of expansion and that, I would put them ahead of Arizona, unfortunately.
Well, that brings us into family and homes, and we talked about Judy a little bit earlier, and I know Judy's been an important part of this journey. By the way, if you've ever grown up in a coach's family, my dad was a head coach. I know it was college, but he was still a head coach, and without my mom Lou there, this thing doesn't work. Period. It doesn't work. The house breaks down. The family breaks down. Judy gets and needs a lot of credit for your success. I'm sorry, I know she didn't pick what lines went on the ice, but Judy needs a lot of credit for this. Wonderful woman. How is she doing right now? I know there was a little scare last year. How is her health, and how is she enjoying your retirement?
Yeah, well, I haven't driven her crazy yet, so that's good. No, her health
Oh,
is much
soon.
better, thanks. We
Okay.
had a real scare. We did. It was, and it kind of opened our eyes. We're both 70 now, so it kind of opened your eyes. Where's your priorities here? We've got good health. Let's enjoy it, which really led to what, where we're sitting here today. We're in Florida. We're loving it so far. We're getting to see the kids. As you mentioned, I went to see Kristen this weekend. We go to see our grandkids up in Ottawa when we
Yeah.
can. My son Ricky and his wife are in Denver, so we're able to see a lot more time with our kids. We actually had a normal Christmas, which we've never
Wow.
had. You're playing the
Yeah.
23rd, the 20s. It's in the rush. We had all of December. The kids all came down. We went golfing again on Christmas Eve. So we had a normal Christmas. So Judy's been enjoying that. But listen, I'm not coaching one game without her, because I remember when they called me in Winnipeg in November of '83 and they said, "Do you want to retire and coach?" And I had to go to, what do you think about this? We quit as a player. We're gonna get into coaching, and you know what that life is like. And no, let's go. And after every time I got fired, we always had a family meeting when the kids
Hmm.
got older. Okay, do you want dad to do something else, or do we want to pursue hockey? And they all said, and Judy kept was the rock behind it all. We're a hockey family. And because of her, she was the rock, and she kept the whole family together. The moves, putting the kids in schools, getting the real, all the activities, she took care of all of that.
Yeah.
And there's no way I'm sitting here today coaching that many games without her love and support. Because it is a team effort, and she's a big part of that team. She's the rock of the team, not me.
Yeah, and you talk about the rest of that team, and you look at Ryan. Ryan's a guy that's gone up through the ranks on his own. And I know people talk about nepotism, and hey, I'll be honest, does it get you a leg up to get your first job? Absolutely, it does. I'm not going to lie, it's true. But you don't stay there. You don't get the next job. You don't get the next job. You don't get the next job unless you're good at what you do. And Ryan is a guy that went up right through the ranks, worked his butt off, and now is an assistant general manager of the Ottawa Senators, a team that's doing extremely well now. Do you watch that team close, and what do you think of Ryan's job there?
Well, okay, let's go back to, so when Ryan played, he played college, played junior, went to the Ontario Reign of the East Coast League for a year, making $500 a week. And at that time, I said,
Yeah.
Ryan, you're 25. What do
Yeah.
you think? So there was a job opening in for the Atlanta Thrashers, and it was an intern job.
Oh,
So he did the interview with the HR person, who knew nothing about
yep.
hockey, knew nothing about Ryan's background or his
Yep.
name or my name.
Yep.
So Ryan got that job,
But
not
good
not
for him.
nepotism. He got that job because the person, the HR person, whoever that was, hired him. And Rick Dudley was there, and Donnie Waddell. And when the guy, the head of the HR department, went to say, "Well, we just hired Ryan Bonus," and they said, "What? Really?" So anyway, he got that on his own.
Yeah.
But no, Ryan was like me. He's got a tremendous passion for the game. And I used to bring Ricky and Ryan to the locker room all the time. Ricky was the genius in the family. He'd go on the
Yep.
computer. Ryan's in the locker room hanging out with the trainers, doing the dirty laundry, hanging
Yep.
out socks. And so Ryan has a true passion for the game. Everything he's done on his own. He started out as an intern with the Thrashers. When they went to Winnipeg, they hired him. He did a little bit of work in the the office. He eventually got into scouting, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins stepped in and offered him the head pro job in Pittsburgh. Went there, they won a Stanley Cup, and that's led to the assistant GM job in Ottawa. So I love Ottawa. I love their nucleus. They're gonna be good for a long time because all those kids are good kids
Yeah.
and they're good players. So I'm very happy for Ryan, but he's done it on his own, and he's smarter than the old man. He went into management, not coaching. So give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, what a wonderful kid. And he's one of those guys that's got that personality you want to be around. He's a happy guy, winning or losing. He's got just that positive energy. And I'm going to go to Judy on that one. Sorry, Bones.
Yeah, go to Judy on that one.
And then this family can't stay away from hockey. Kristen was going to be a school teacher when she was here in Arizona. Going to be a teacher. Got smart, got out of the game, and yet they pulled her right back in. What's she up to?
She's in Utah now. So, yeah, she was a teacher for a couple of years. There was a couple of incidents that happened when she was teaching, and I'm really glad she's not teaching anymore. I got to tell you that. But anyways, so she ended up doing some work for the Tampa Bay Lightning, just in the community, helping with the minor hockey. She's a coach like I am. She's got more level than I do, right?
Yeah.
As she does. And then she went to work for Nashville. She did the same thing for the Predators. But then last summer, the Utah Hockey Club reached out to her and offered her a great job. She's running the minor hockey program up there. She's got the girls involved playing. She's setting up that whole program up there. And there's another scenario. Well, so the Utah people are all basketball people. They're all the Jazz. So the head of the Jazz, the president of the Jazz, actually hired Kristen. So now he's talking to Bill Armstrong and said, geez, we just hired this girl from Nashville. Her name is Kristen Bowness. And Bill said to him, is that Rick's daughter? And he said, who's Rick? I love that.
That's hockey in Utah. There you go.
Exactly. There's the basketball person. Yeah. But so she's loving it. She's doing a great job. Judy and I've been up there to see her a couple of times. So that's going to be a great franchise. And I know it's terrible that they left Phoenix, but that is going to be a good franchise. The owner there's got money.
The owner.
They want to win, and they're going to spend the money, and they're going to do it right, which is the first for a long time for all those players and training staff and everyone else has been involved in Phoenix. So
they deserved it.
But no, she's loving it. So good for her.
And lastly, we got to talk about the genius of the family. You are right. He is the smart one. And what's Ricky up to?
Ricky is now he works for an educational company in Denver. So he worked for the Red Wings for a couple of years, Columbus Blue Jackets in the media relations department, and then he finally said, "Dad, like I've got to get out of hockey." Yeah. I won't tell you why. Anyway, so he went to University of Denver and he took his master's in education.
Good for him.
Communication. Jim Montgomery was the coach then when they won the national championship. So now he's working for an educational company in Denver. He looks after their social media and media releases. His wife is the vice president of ticket and suite sales for the Colorado Avalanche. So they're still involved with the NHL.
I've got to say this. One thing that people might not know about Rick Bowness, a lot of these coaches that go in and out of cities, they get apartments and they leave their families where they were so the kids can stay in that school with their friends, all of those things. But one thing that Rick Bowness did everywhere he coached is he bought a house and became part of the community. And I know that happened here in Arizona when you were here with the Coyotes, and I know it's happened every step along the way. And that, again, just goes to show the person that you are. I'm going to close with two things, Bones. One, every person that's ever come on this show, even when I was back at my own outlet in Phoenix, we talked about tales from the road, and we're looking for these lighthearted stories that show that boys are still boys and they still can have fun. And so I want to know a prank that you've either seen, been a part of, or pulled on a player that you've seen that's family friendly. We got to keep that in mind here. It's a family show. On something you have seen throughout your long time travels in the National Hockey League. Can you give us one tale from the road?
I guess actually when we used to travel commercial and we'd be in airports and the guys would get bored. So they'd put a plane ticket and they put $1 bill or a $5 bill and stick it out at the end and put a little fishing line on it, throw it out in the middle of the hallway. And people were coming to run to their tickets or their gate and they'd see it and they'd reach down to grab the ticket and the $1 bill and they'd yank it. And there'd be 10 idiot players over there laughing their full heads off and they'd make this guy chase it. So little things like that we used to be able to do.
Well, you did that now, somebody'd sue somebody. You couldn't do that now.
Well, yeah, they'd hurt themselves bending over.
Yeah, then they're suing you. And the last thing I want to add, by the way, that's great because I want to see kids still have fun, and I worry that some of the fun has left the game now, and I worry that some of those experiences. I was afraid to fall asleep my first 4 years on a plane, and by the way, no one knew who I was. None of the players did. I thought they did, but they didn't. I was worried if I fell asleep, they're going to cut my tie in half, or they were gonna put peanuts up my nose because I've seen it.
Or shaving cream top of your head.
Yes. But they're fun, and I'm worried. I'm worried with all the money and all the pressure and all the things now. I hope there's still some guys that bring fun to the game. I hope so, because I'm worried that it's going. Lastly, Bones, I watch. You're retired now. You get time to watch TV, and this is something I want to give to the listeners. There's so much options out there to binge and watch TV. One, are you watching? Do you ever watch Netflix, Hulu, Max? What show are you and Judy watching right now that you can recommend to somebody, whether it's a movie or a TV show?
Well, we were big on the Yellowstone.
Oh, very good.
We love that. We love that. Now, 1923 came back
Yep.
out last night, so we're watching that. We've watched The Tulsa King. We've enjoyed that, right?
Yeah,
We've
very
enjoyed,
good.
The Lioness. We watched
I
the bit
haven't
of
seen
that.
it. Haven't seen
Okay,
it.
that's pretty good. Landman with Billy Bob
Billy
Thornton.
Bob. I haven't given
Landman.
it. It's in my list. Is it? So it's a
Yeah, you
recommend
got to
from
watch. Oh,
Bones.
it's absolutely. He is fantastic in it. He makes the whole show. So, but now we're waiting for the next episode to come up. But yeah, we're watching those things.
Bones, I love to see you looking as good as you look right now, and you're smiling and you're happy. I do miss those cups of coffee in the morning. That was my favorite time working in the National Hockey League. It wasn't breaking down video at 2 a.m. It was sitting talking hockey over a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah, those are the real times
with people like you, and I sincerely miss that every single day.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule. I loved catching up with you, and we have to do this more often. Thanks, Bones.
Hope so. My pleasure. Good luck with it, and hope we can do it again.
Yeah, thanks, Bones. Take care of yourself. We'll talk to you soon.
Put something in that gray beard, though. Make it dark.
I know, I'm getting old. Talk to you soon, Bones. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Inside the Coach's Room. And a big thanks to Rick Bowness taking the time out of his schedule to sit and visit with me. I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to Inside the Coach's Room YouTube channel so you don't miss these interviews and all of the video content that I put out, the breakdowns, the learning of the game. So make sure you check that out, subscribe, and leave a like and a thumbs up. And wherever you're listening to this on your podcast, if you are listening, please leave a like and a review. It really helps me out. And subscribe. And as always, I'm Petey, and we'll see you at the rink.